Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade, and well, in this one I wanted to talk about augmentation evokers and how as a retribution paladin you can get the most benefit of having one in your group. So as we all know, augmentation evokers have taken Mythic Plus by storm this week, being extremely powerful, although in damage meters you won't see it, but in Warcraft logs you will. They are extremely strong, being like the best Mythic Plus composition, a bear tank, a holy pally, a shadow priest, a fire mage, and the augmentation evoker. You know, they do extreme amounts of damage, amplifying the damage capabilities of everyone in the group because they give flat out a bunch of extra stats that you're going to be using. So I'll be talking on how do you get the buffs from the evoker, how do these things work, the talent builds that you can use when playing with one of them, and the preferred gear you want also when playing with one of them. So with that being said, let's start with the video. Okay guys, how do we get these buffs and what do they do? So there's 5 buffs that the evoker can give to do damage, and 2 of those are general and give them to the whole group, and 3 of those they are only going to be giving them to a specific person they choose or the person that's closest to them. So let's talk about general buffs because those are actually the most important and the bulk of the damage, the buffs that you're going to be getting. So the first one is called Ebon Might. So Ebon Might is an ability the evoker throws every 30 seconds. It just gives a bunch of extra primary stat, and as we know, Retribution Paladins love primary stat because that means our base abilities are going to hit harder, and on top of that we have a lot of damage multipliers, like for example our Mastery, Versatility, we have Wings, we have Final Reckoning. And if, for example, if you're using the 4 Holy Power build, you got Banquest of Justice as well. That's another cooldown multiplier, 20% extra damage on your Holy Power spender. So that's really powerful. Remember, main stat will only benefit paladin ability, so this is not going to increase the damage of any external sources, being that the Frostfire belt, the Shadow Flame patch, beacon, anvil, all those things are not going to get amplified by this thing, and this is the bulk of the evoker's amplification damage. I would say this is like 25% of the damage that they're going to be giving you as main stat, you know. Okay, so that's the most powerful buff that they're gonna give, and they're gonna give it to the whole group. Now let's talk to the second one. This one is Breath of Aeons. So Breath of Aeons is a 2-minute cooldown they have. You're gonna notice it. It's pretty like easy to see. The evoker just flies over the targets and like spits on them, and then they take extra damage. You know, they get a debuff and they take 15% extra damage of the abilities the other people are doing. You know, so you hit stuff and they take 15% extra damage after a while, you know. Pretty good. It's a really powerful cooldown. It has 2 minutes, like I said, so it lines up with your wings as well, you know. Every 2 minutes they're gonna throw that. You have your wings every 1 minute, so naturally it's gonna line up with those. Oh, I forgot to say this thing about Ebon Might. It has a 30-second cooldown, and it's also going to line up with every single one of your wings because 30 seconds, you know, every minute you're gonna do your cooldowns, and that thing's going to be up, and you're gonna get buffed because of that. Really good synergy with us. Okay, now let's go to the 3 other cooldowns that they have. That they have to pick a specific person or the person that's nearest to them. So the evoker can actually choose who to put these buffs on with this ability that's called Prescience. Prescience just gives 3% extra critical strike to the person they choose, and they are going to get the benefits of these other buffs. Okay, the first one of these abilities that benefits from Prescience is Fate's Mirror. So Fate's Mirror is just a talent the evoker can take, which makes the target of their Prescience have a 20% chance to proc 15% extra damage on the ability that triggered. So basically it's just extra damage whenever this happens. And the last of the buffs that evokers can give us is their Mastery. So this is called Shifting Sands. So this one actually doesn't work with Prescience like I thought. So this one targets the person that is closest to them that has the Ebon Might buff, you know, and it gives them a moderate amount of versatility, which is pretty good, you know. It's a pretty decent. Versatility is always powerful because it can be used offensively and defensively, because half of the versatility becomes a damage reduction as well. So as you can see from all this, the bulk of the power of the evoker's buffs are going to come from that Ebon Might and the Breath of Aeons, you know, because the buffs that they can give to the whole group. So having known that and known that Ebon Might only buffs paladin abilities, this actually makes us think about how we can talent and how we can build when we're playing with one of these evokers. So now let's go into that. Okay guys, so what builds do I want to use with an augmentation evoker? Luckily for us, we don't really have to change anything. We just play as normal. You can either use the Templar strikes build that I have here. I prefer to use this build with double blades of justice just to spam them more, you know, especially if there's more than 5 targets on dungeons. Just spam that blade, is gonna give you a lot of extra and capped AoE damage, and you're also spreading your expurgation to those mobs, you know. This build is going to be in the description of the video. It's pretty simple. I think everyone knows the classic Templar strikes build. You can also go with a Crusading strikes build. So this is the Crusading strikes build that I'm talking about. Crusading strike and Templar strikes are pretty close in value. This is also going to be in the description of the video, by the way, if you want to use it. Both builds are really close in value, you know. There's like 0.5% difference between them, you know. I personally prefer Templar strikes because I will also get the extra damage multiplier of Bangers of Justice, you know, and I don't like not having my Holy Fire be like on demand, on my control, you know. But everyone likes what they like, you know. Both builds are viable, so pick one of those for Mythic Plus content. Now let's go on what stats and gear do you want to use with evokers, and actually this is a bit like different. Okay, let's get into the interesting part. So, gearing. When playing with an augmentation evoker, we have to remember that the bulk of their buffs are coming from Even Might. That's the main stat buff. That is going to be a huge amount of their damage contributions to yourself, and main stat only applies to paladin abilities, you know, so external sources of damage become weaker. In the trinket department, currently Retribution Paladins, well, before this patch, the best in slot stuff for Retributions were 2 trinkets from the raid, the Pocket Anvil, and also the Sarkaret Beacon from the Beyond. So the 2 things were really damn powerful. But now, if you're playing with an augmentation evoker and with the changes of 10.1.5, Beacon from the Beyond has become worse. So instead of Beacon from the Beyond, I recommend, if you can, use Neltharion's Call to Chaos. It's just going to give you more value compared to Beacon from the Beyond, and paired with an augmentation evoker, you're getting main stat from this thing, you're getting main stat from the evokers, and that's going to make you a lot stronger. On the other trinket, so Elemental Pocket Anvil, while it does give you external damage power, and that damage is not really amplified by much of the things that the evoker is going to give you, it's still a pretty decent trinket. But now we have another option, you know. If you don't have the Elemental Pocket Anvil, Omnius Chromatic Essence is a valid actual choice instead of the Anvil, because it gives you just a stats thing, you know. But since evokers like amplify our base stats so much, the extra stats from the Omnius Chromatic Essence can actually kind of compete with the Anvil, you know. So those 2 trinkets are actually valid options of our second like best in slot trinket that you can get for Mythic Plus dungeons. Okay, now let's talk about embellishments. So for embellishments, there's 2 like I consider best for Mythic Plus dungeons, and these are allied risk guards of companionship. This just gives you a bunch of versatility. It's like 1.3% increase in damage increase in burst, so it's pretty good, you know. There's the other one that's Frostfire Legwards of Preparation. I recommend everyone to get this thing. It just gives you a huge burst of haste whenever you face a pack of 5 mobs, you know. It gives you about 13% extra haste, which is just really good, you know. So it's just you start with a mini lust every single pull, which is very strong because it's also stats, and this is going to compound on whatever the evoker is going to give you on top of your own like burst cooldowns like Final Reckoning, Wings, and all those things. I see a lot of people asking me, what about Frostfire Legwards, Frostfire Belt, or like Shadow Flame patch for Mythic Plus dungeons? And if you're playing with an evoker, those things are completely useless. They're getting almost any benefits, almost no benefits from the evoker. And also in Mythic Plus dungeons, they're kind of like worthless because they only add a very small amount of damage compared to the other like stat procs that you can get, amplifying multiplicatively your damage, you know. So those are the 2 like best in slot embellishments that you can get, especially if playing with an augmentation evoker. So when playing with an augmentation evoker, the stat weights would be looking something like that, like this, you know. So strength first, always main stat is king. After that, you want to get some mastery. Mastery is going to be a pretty decent stat to get when you pair it up with an augmentation evoker. Then you get haste depending on your build. You want to get either, like I said, 25%-ish on Templar strikes build, or 30% when you're using Crusading strikes. After that, you can get versatility and critical strike. Both are pretty decent stats as well. Remember, this is not something that you have to follow on the dot. This is just an approximation of what you probably want to get this patch. And well, you will also want to simulate yourself always. Remember to always simulate your character. I've made also a video where you can simulate your character on doing a full Mythic Plus run using some add-ons. I'll leave the link to that video as well in the description below if you want to check that out. It's pretty useful, you know, it gives you a very nice picture of how your damage should be in the Mythic Plus key. I've really enjoyed playing with Augmentation Evokers. They make a good DPS great and a great DPS overpowered. Also, the way they buff is very fair since the bulk of their buffs are given in the form of Ebon Might and Breath of Eons, you know. They also bring a ton of survivability to their group, which is very valuable, you know. All in all, a great addition to the game, I think. And well, that's going to be the end of the video, guys. If you enjoy my content, subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. Thanks for watching, everyone.